On the 12th of September 1919, Adolf Hitler went to a political meeting at the Sterneckerbräu beer hall in Munich in order to spy on the meeting for the army. Instead of spying, he got himself into an argument with another visitor, probably shouted a lot, and then got invited to join what was then called the German Workers' Party, that is the DAP, by Anton Drexler, who was then the head of the Munich branch of the party. Well, there was only one branch and probably no more than 50 members, but they were thinking ahead. Anyway, the rest is, as they say, history. Hitler later said that he wanted to form his own political party, but on reading Drexler's pamphlet on his political awakening, he knew that this was the party for him. But it was not the first party that he tried to join. Around the time that Hitler made his first appearance at the German Workers' Party, Hitler appeared at the office of Hans Georg Grassinger. Grassinger gave testimony after the war, but his testimony is borne out by other events, and there is a link below to the archival evidence. Grassinger was a member of the Thule Society, an organisation of mainly wealthy people who dabbled in the occult and believed in Greek and Norse mythology and held what might be termed conservative, nationalist and racist views. It had around 1,750 members, mainly in Munich, and Ian Kershaw, the historian who wrote about Hitler, summed it up as a who's who of who was to be important in the Nazi Party, or words to that effect. Hans Georg Grassinger was born in Mallersdorf, around 110 kilometers northeast of Munich, in 1887. His father was a tailor. He trained as a printer and worked in this business all his life. At the end of World War I, he took an active role in politics, was elected to one of the soldiers' committees in the Bavarian government, and was allied to the Social Democratic wing, which opposed the government of Kurt Eisner. He was recruited into the Thule Society around this time. Grassinger founded the German Socialist Party towards the end of 1918 with 7 other people. Notable amongst the 8 founders of the DSP are the Düsseldorf engineer Alfred Brunner, who supplied the ideology, Gregor Strasser, who was murdered on Hitler's orders in the Night of the Long Knives in 1934, and Julius Streicher, later known as the Jew Baiter of Nuremburg and publisher of Der Stuermer, who ended up on the gallows in Nuremberg in 1946. The party program combined völkisch and anti-Semitic elements, which no doubt would have kept the Thule Society happy, and socialist elements, which may not have done. Basically, the aim of the party was to unite the workforce on, and I quote, a German national basis, excluding Jews from society. The DSP also published the meanderings of Brunner. Around the same time, the Thule Society bought the newspaper Münchner Beobachter and, after adding a sports section, called it the Münchner Beobachter und Sportsblatt, where Grassinger later worked. The Thule Society used its paper's editor, Karl Harrer, to persuade railway toolmaker Anton Drexler to found the German Workers' Party. This party was founded mainly by the workmates of Drexler. Why did the Thule Society want to create the DAP? The only answer I can give, and this is just an idea, is that the Thule Society wanted to create semi-secret cells within shop floors in a similar way to what the communists had done and were doing. It later broke with the Nazis when Drexler and Hitler openly wanted to compete in elections and seek new members. So let's now return to Munich in September 1919. Hitler approached Hans Georg Grassinger at his office in Tierstrasse near the river Isar in Munich and offered to join the party and write for its paper. He also said that he was penniless and asked to borrow money from Grassinger. But Grassinger told him that there was no opening for him in the paper and saw no role for him in the party. Hitler was then still in the army, so he was not penniless. He had somewhere to live, food provided, and a reasonably easy job. He was an intelligence agent and was sent to spy on parties like the DSP. So I suspect he was sent to the DSP with orders to infiltrate it, as later he successfully did with the DAP. So let's now see how the story continues. At the party congress from the 23rd to the 25th of April 1920 in Hanover, the DSP prepared for the Reichstag elections of the 6th of June 1920. The party ran in 5 of the 35 constituencies in Germany: South Hanover, Braunschweig, Westphalia North, Franconia, Leipzig, and Chemnitz-Zwickau. It got a total of 7,188 votes, or to put it another way, 0.03% of the overall national vote. At this time, and this was probably when it was at its peak, the party had 35 local groups with around 2,000 members. So in other words, for each member it had, it got 3.5 votes. Now, this might sound a bit like the Life of Brian situation, with a lot of parties with indistinguishable policies fighting amongst themselves for a tiny part of the vote and ignored by the vast bulk of the population. In 1920, there was a geographical delimitation agreement between the DSP and the NSDAP, which the DAP had changed its name to in February 1920. The DSP was to be limited to the area north of the River Main and the Nuremberg area. So the NSDAP was therefore to be based in the south of Germany. In October 1920, the DSP board moved from Hanover to Berlin. In the following month, Emil Holz became party chairman. Holz came from the Berlin local group, which was founded in June 1920, and his group became known for being the most active of all DSP groups. An agreement between Streicher and other DSP members with NSDAP chairman Anton Drexler from the end of March 1921 provided for the merger of the NSDAP, DSP, and Austrian National Socialists to form what would have been called the German National Socialist Party. This would have meant transferring the party HQ from Munich to Berlin. This agreement was initially kept secret. In July 1921, Adolf Hitler and Dietrich Eckart went to Berlin on a fundraising mission. In their absence, the committee, with Drexler at its head, attempted to force through the merger. Hitler was furious when he found out about what had happened behind his back, and on the 11th of July 1921, Hitler resigned from the party. The reason for Hitler's fury could well have been that he remembered that Grassinger had spurned him only 22 months earlier. The DSP was then much bigger than the DAP, and a merger would have meant submitting to it and moving to Berlin. Thus Hitler put his own ambition ahead of that of the party. And I think at this point I need to remind you that the DSP got only 0.03% of the vote. Members of the Nazi Party, however, realized that it was Hitler who brought in the crowds. If Hitler left, the party would disintegrate. Nazi patriot Dietrich Eckart persuaded Hitler to return, but Hitler set out his terms. He demanded that he would replace Drexler as party chairman and that he would get the final say on everything. So this was put to the vote. On the 29th of July 1921, of the 534 Nazi Party members who voted, 533 cast their votes for Hitler. Drexler presumably voted for himself, but no one else did. The DSP, however, was in decline. Julius Streicher left the party and joined up with Hitler in October 1922. The DSP was dissolved in the autumn of 1922, and Grassinger continued on his old job, starting a company up on the 6th of December 1922 called Doikula, which years later boasted on its masthead that it was founded in 1922. Fast forward now 12 years. In 1933, Hitler seized power. In 1934, and seeing a good market opportunity, Grassinger published a book called Before Hitler Came, and published by Adam Alfred Rudolf Glauer, also known as Rudolf Freier von Sebottendorf. This book describes the links between the Thule Society and the origins of National Socialism, amongst other gems which appear largely to be fictitious. It also alleges that Hitler and all around him were Jewish. Well, the two had fallen out after all, and this must have been about the worst insult that they could give. The initial print run was a success, and the full 2,000 books were quickly sold out. Grassinger then logically decided to do a second print run, this time with 5,000 books. However, the Gestapo got wind of it, seized the books, and only 12 of the 5,000 survived. Grassinger was arrested and questioned about his activities, his previous party, and the Thule Society, with which Hitler had parted ways in 1920, and which was no longer in existence. But obviously, as potentially secret societies, the Gestapo wanted to know about them. The Gestapo was clearly satisfied with his responses, and he was released. Adam Glauer was also arrested, but released, probably using the old boy network of the lunatic right, and he promptly fled to Turkey. During the Second World War, he was a paid British informer, and as from 1942, he was giving information, although apparently the information he gave was useless. His British minder kept up the payments as he felt sorry for the penniless old man. The book Before Hitler Came was republished in Germany in 1962, and it got banned once more. It's now available online. I've had a look at it and could suggest it as a potential cure for insomnia, or if a hard copy can be found, it might stabilize a wobbly table or get a fire going. Grassinger stated in 1951 that he had never joined the NSDAP and disagreed with Hitler's extremism, whereas after the war one might say that he would say that now, wouldn't he? But given that he didn't join the party, even when it made sense to do so after 1933, I think he deserves the benefit of the doubt. As far as I can see, his son, born in 1928, ran the company after his retirement, and the company continued in business and shortly before the death of his son in 2011. Now, let's return to Munich in September 1919. What if Grassinger had accepted Hitler's proposal? What would have happened? Well, obviously we don't know. It might have been more difficult for Hitler to get control of the DSP, as it had around 4 times more members than the DAP, and furthermore was not concentrated in one place, as the DAP was in Munich, thus diluting Hitler's influence. Had Hitler been in Berlin, then the beer hall putsch of November 1923 would not have taken place, and it was that, I think, which really launched Hitler's career. However, I think that this is a what-if situation which is really too difficult to ponder on. No doubt, some of you may have some ideas, then you might want to write them down below. What would have happened if Hitler had joined this party? Thank you very much for listening, and indeed that story was much longer than I had planned on. I thought I'd do a 3 or 4 minute video, and now it's heading on for 16 minutes. But anyway, that's the way sometimes it happens. I kept putting in more and more detail to sort of justify it, and I had to take quite a lot out as well. But I think that this is a story I'm going to come back to, and I've made a decision that if new information comes forward, or there's other things which I think worthy of updating, then I can do future editions of these videos. I can update videos and then publish them at a later date. So what I might start doing is, if this takes off, then every let's say couple of years I'll come back to something and then see what can be improved upon. Okay, thanks for listening. I publish every Friday at 8 o'clock Central European time, and I sometimes publish videos at other times as well. The advantage of being here when I actually publish is that you can actually communicate with me, assuming of course that I'm also present for the premiere, which isn't always the case. Thanks for listening, and all the best from me. I'm in Rybnik in Poland at the moment, so all the best from Rybnik.